Hi, this is Bobby Barrack. Myself, as well as the Snag Proof Manufacturing Company, would like to thank you for purchasing our product. The Bobby's Perfect Buzz, in the next few upcoming minutes, I'm going to show you how I fish this thing, the types of structures that I like to fish this thing, the type of equipment that I use when I'm throwing this thing, the speed, the depth, the different vegetations, the different types of structures that I throw this thing around. You know, everybody thinks about, hey, it's a frog with a buzz. What do? You just tie it on and throw it out in the middle of the lake? We're not going to do that. There's a purpose for every cast, whether it's Bobby's Perfect Buzz, Bobby's Perfect Frog, whatever it may be. Every throw that I'm going to make with this or the other frog has got a purpose. And there's a variety, in bass fishing, we got all kinds of different scenarios and all kinds of different places to throw this thing. And I think as you watch this thing, maybe it'll open up a few channels in your mind to where you start thinking, hey, I got some spots like that on Clear Lake, or I got some spots like that on Lake Guntersville, or I got some spots like that on Lake Texoma, wherever it may be. You're gonna watch this and it's gonna open up your mind to some of the different situations that you have on your home lake. Before we go fishing, I'm gonna show you the type of equipment that I like to use when I'm tying on a Bobby's Perfect Buzz or a Bobby's Perfect Frog. There's two different rods that I will use. This is a Cara Amistad from Falcon. It's a 7'3", but it's got a lot of juice. It's got a lot of horsepower. It's got a little faster tip than the other rod that I use, but I really, really like that rod. I don't want buggy whip. I want something that's got some backbone. The other rod that I use for my frog fishing is a 7'10" Bobby's Perfect Frog rod from Falcon. 7-to-1 gear ratio reel, 65-pound braided line. Don't throw 50. 50 breaks. 50 is just too thin. 65, it's about the diameter of 12-pound test, so if you get bit, big strike, and you swing and you put a lot of tension on that knot, it's going to hold. With 50-pound braid, it's just a little bit too thin. If you throw that thing around and throw that thing around, you get 5, 6, 7 fish up to 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds, and then mama eats, and you swing, that's bite number 8 with a lot of tension, a lot of whip on that knot. It's gonna pop with 50. Go with 65. My braid of preference is Stren Sonic Braid, 65 pound. Love it. Guys are always asking me, what knot do you tie with your braid? My favorite knot to tie is a Berkeley trilene knot. I love that knot. A lot of the other knots that I'm familiar with that are out there, you will tie the knot and a lot of times you have to clip off 10 inches of line or a foot of line. I fish 300 days a year. So if I had to cut off 10 inches to a foot of line every time I tied a knot with my braid, I'm gonna go through a tremendous amount of braid by the end of the year. Let's not do that. So what I do is I tie the trilene knot to where I have a minimal amount of braid that goes to waste. I'm gonna go through the eye of the Perfect Buzz, just like that. I'm going through once. I'm gonna come around. I'm gonna go back through it the same direction that I did before, just like that. Now I've got a loop, okay? I am gonna hold on to that loop. I'm gonna hold on to that loop. I've got my tag end, and I'm gonna wind up the main line 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then when I come back around and I go through both loops together, and then when I cinch it down, it's like a cobra. It just coils down on top of itself. I don't need any clippers. I have no braided line waste, and I'm ready to go. And I can swing as hard as I want on as many fish as I want today, and that line is not gonna break with 65-pound braided line. When you're throwing the Perfect Buzz, what I like to do is keep my rod at about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at the end of my throw. And then as the bait gets closer to me, I will drop my rod tip. What you don't want to do is throw your bait out there and drive that rod tip down here and start to wind. What you do is you get that blade, it will start to go subsurface a little bit. At a 9 o'clock rod angle, the blade will elevate just a little bit and it will start to churn at the beginning of your throw. Very important for a lot of those. If you make a nice, good throw, a lot of times that fish, you get her attention and that bait starts to churn the water, and you'll get a lot of those big bites within 2 or 3 feet of where that bait lands. So keep that rod tip at about 9, 10 o'clock. Elevate that blade. We want that blade to be elevated just a bit like that. If you have your rod tip down, it's going to drive that bait subsurface. If you keep your rod at 9, 10 o'clock, it's going to elevate that blade and it'll start to churn right away. Very important. Usually, no matter what body of water you're targeting largemouth bass, it's got rocks in it, okay? Whether it's wing dams, dikes, levees, the face of a dam. And usually when you're dealing with rocks, it's a low light level situation. So first thing in the morning or in the evening, grab your perfect buzz. If you're fishing in the early morning, grab a black one. If you're fishing in the middle of the day and you're fishing those rock levees, grab a white one or a black one if the water's relatively clear. And then late afternoon, evenings, you want to go with black, white, or chartreuse. Either one or all of those threes will get you some really cool bites. Here's a quick synopsis of some of the different types of vegetations that you might want to throw your Bobby Perfect Buzz in, around, over, and through. When you're fishing a lot of standing timber like we have here, you know, you got a tremendous amount of wood that's in the water, but probably only about 10–15% of it's any good. So you've got to eliminate it as quickly as possible, and the Perfect Buzz allows you to do that. With a standard buzz bait, a lot of times when you're pulling it through wood, as the bait is tracking, it'll bump a piece of wood, it'll rotate to the side, and a lot of times that hook will grab that piece of wood. With the Perfect Buzz, it will rotate, that blade will deflect off the wood, kick the body to the side, and it comes right over the top of the wood. So it allows you to cover a tremendous amount of water and look for those key trees where those 3 to 5 pound fish are holding. Some of the biggest bass I've caught to date on the Perfect Buzz have been in this scenario right here, which is one of the main reasons this bait was developed. So I can have a noisy frog coming right through sparse tules or bulrushes for those of you that are from the Northeast. Your standard buzz baits, a lot of times it will swing and turn sideways and that hook will grab a tule. This Perfect Buzz has almost got 4-wheel drive, and it drives right over the top or through those sparse tules. And if that big bass is sitting next to that one tule stalk that you bump into, kabang. I love fishing expanse grass flats just like this here. I always feel like there's more fish off the bank than there is on the bank. We've got a whole bunch of elodea, a little bit of milfoil mixed in, some American pondweed, just scattered all over this flat, and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And with the Perfect Buzz, it allows you to cover the maximum amount of water in the shortest period of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the Perfect Buzz around the milfoil, around the elodea, and I'm going to try and get some bites. And they'll be in certain sections. There'll be some bites here. You might go 100 yards, 150 yards before you get bit. But usually when you get bit on these expanse grass flats, there'll be little groups of fish, and that's what you're looking for. Another advantage of the Perfect Buzz is you can throw it on top of some vegetation, let it sit for a second, and then wind it right off the top of that. And a lot of times, some of your biggest bites will come within that far of where that bait leaves that vegetation. You'll get about 4 or 5 winds on that handle, and here she comes. Ooh, be ready. Duckweed is another fantastic structure to throw the Perfect Buzz in. Duckweed is a loose green plant that floats, and as that Perfect Buzz comes through there, it will part ways, depending on how thick that stuff is. If it's a little bit thicker, then you're gonna have to pick up the tempo with the Perfect Buzz. But if it's a fine layer of duckweed, you can throw that Perfect Buzz out there and just creep it right through there, and you'll get some tremendous strikes. Those of you that love to fish docks like I do, usually in the middle of the day, you wanna focus on the shade. That's where those bigger bass are gonna be. If I've got a long straight wall, like what we have right here, I'm just gonna throw sidearm. I'm gonna throw sidearm. I'm gonna try and keep that bait as low as possible, because when you're doing the docks, you got the gangways and dog runs, whatever it may be. Sometimes you got to get it under some pretty tight quarters. So the whole key to fishing docks, presenting a perfect buzz, is to keep it low. I want to throw my perfect buzz underneath this gangway right here and parallel with that breakwater. I'd love to pitch it, but I've got a dog run that's in my way right here. So I am going to just throw this thing sidearm, and the whole time I'm going to be thinking, keep it low, keep it low. When you make that presentation underneath a gangway, parallel with the dock, along the side of a break wall, the most important thing to get this to perform at the maximum is to throw it out there and keep your rod at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock. Elevate that blade just a bit with the rod angle, and you're gonna have that joker churning right off the bat. Here's a quick clip at some of the different retrieves that you can use and utilize in your day of fishing with the Bobby's Perfect Buzz. With the Perfect Buzz, there's a lot of different cadences that you can use as you're retrieving that bait. A steady wind, a quick wind, or stop and go, pop and go, whatever it may be. So many different ways to present this bait. In bass fishing, depth and speed of retrieve are two of the biggest keys to having a successful day. When I'm throwing the Perfect Buzz, I like to wind that bait at about this tempo right here with a 6.2, 7.2 gear ratio reel. I like to wind it just fast enough to get those legs kicking. If you wind it too slow, the legs won't kick that much. But if you find that happy mid-range right about there, those legs will wobble like this. There are times during the course of the day, usually 2 45-minute periods during the course of the day, where you can throw that Perfect Buzz out there and burn it back pretty quick, and those fish will chase. You'll get the trigger bite, you'll get fish that are actively feeding that will track it down and squash it. But for the most part, in a typical 10-hour fishing day, you'll get the most bites and the most action if you just wind it about that fast, just fast enough to get those legs to kick. Give that a crack. Oh! Outside. Oh! Oh, did she crack that? Oh! I got about 2 little buzzes on that thing, and she decided to crack that thing. That was really, really cool. Boy, she didn't get a whole lot of that bait either. But I'll tell you what, that's one of the things that I really like about that EWG style hook in that Perfect Buzz. Once that hook gets a hold of them, the angle of that EWG style hook, once that rod loads up, you're usually going to be able to put them in the boat. That's a pretty one right there. It was my pleasure to introduce you folks to the new Bobby's Perfect Buzz. If you have any questions pertaining to this bait or any of the other snag-proof products that you have in your tackle box, go to www.snagproof.com or get on Snag-Proof's Facebook page. Ask those questions, and I'll try and get to every single answer that I possibly can. On behalf of Bobby Barrack and Snag-Proof Manufacturing Company, thank you.